Welcome to the Pay Love Forward and Resilient Stories podcast. My name is Dr. Matthew Leavenworth, founder and director of Pay Love Forward. This series shares the stories of quiet builders of compassion, those who choose to live and lead with courageous authenticity. At Pay Love Forward, our mission is to build compassionate communities for the at-risk and underserved through mentorship. This podcast is one way we live out that mission. In this episode, I had the privilege of sitting down with my father, Dr. Paul Leavenworth, founder of the Center for Mentoring, Coaching, and Leadership Development. The center represents the culmination of a lifetime devoted to leadership and transformation. It began as a vision and has grown into a model for developing mentors, transforming cultures, and equipping leaders to build communities rooted in compassion and purpose. Our conversation traces how that vision took shape, from Paul's early work in leadership development to the formation of the center and the mentoring movement that continues to grow from it. We talk about transformation, the power of presence, and what it means to lead in a way that multiplies love. This conversation also happens in a moment when his work is alive and expanding. Fresh off trainings with School District 2 and Harvest Church, we're helping leaders, mentors, and neighbors across Billings rediscover compassionate listening as a tool for transformation. When I reflect on my father's work, one quote comes to mind. Brene Brown once said, "A deep sense of love and belonging is an irresistible need for all men, women, and children. We're biologically, cognitively, physically, and spiritually wired to love, to be loved, and to belong. When those needs aren't met, we don't function as we're meant to. We break, we fall apart, we numb, we ache, we hurt others, we get sick. We're living in a world that is, in many ways, sick, fractured, weary, and forgetful of how to listen. We've lost the capacity to sit with one another's pain without trying to fix or flee. The simple act of being present, of hearing the story within the story, may be one of those few remaining pathways to healing." David Brooks puts it another way. Above almost any other need, human beings long to have another person look into their face with loving respect and acceptance. It's that we lack the practical knowledge for how to give each other the kind of rich attention we desire. My father's work and the work of the center offers that practical knowledge. It teaches us to see each other deeply, to listen with love, and to walk together towards a transformed life. Transformation is never simple. It's a kind of death and rebirth, the courage to release what once defined us so that something truer can take shape. My father and I both lived through that process, each reshaped by loss, grace, and renewal. For years, we were like two rivers running in separate channels. Now those waters have converged to share the stage with him, to teach with him. After all that has been broken and rebuilt, feels less like a milestone and more like coming home. This conversation carries that hard, luminous beauty. At the heart of the Center for Mentoring, Coaching, and Leadership Development, and at the heart of Pay Love Forward, is the conviction that belonging is both human need and sacred responsibility. The world needs better stories, and Pay Love Forward intends to tell them. All right, we are officially live and recording. So, just kind of for starters, we're out here right now. You and Mom flew out, and we are doing a couple of certification trainings in mentoring and coaching. Maybe just kind of let's talk about that. What were we out here doing this weekend?
So, primarily through your network of people, we've had an opportunity to do training in compassionate listening, compassionate leadership, and building compassionate communities. So I'm the director of the Center for Mentoring, Coaching, and Leadership Development at Grandview University in Des Moines, Iowa. And so we have online, blended, and in-person training that we do. And so on an invitation basis, we do our training. And so we were able to come out here and do two trainings in what is called our Focused Life Workshop, which primarily focuses on understanding yourself so that you can be more sensitive to understanding other people. So we did one on Saturday with Harvest Church, and we did one on Monday with Billings Public Schools.
Mm-hmm. And so both you and I, we're tired right now.
Yes.
They are 8-hour all day trainings.
Pretty intensive.
But I also thought too that they were such rich experiences, and it's fresh for both of us right now, and so kind of wanted to have this conversation. Well, let's just start with maybe kind of talking about what the Center for Mentor Coaching and Leadership Development is.
Yeah, so about 7 years ago, I am a graduate instructor in organizational leadership at Grandview University, and so I was asked to put together a pilot program titled Mentoring, Coaching, and Leadership Development, where students would actually have 4 sessions with a certified mentor coach, and the evaluation of that pilot course were quite encouraging.
So you built a master's class, and it was on mentoring and coaching, but in that class they were assigned a mentor coach.
Right.
Yeah.
And so they met 4 times during that particular course, and the feedback was very, very, very positive. So they made it a permanent part of the Masters in Science and Organizational Leadership. And so we continue to do that today. What happened as a result of the course is they thought they had a marketing advantage.
Yeah,
and
light
so
bulbs went on. Yeah.
So they approached me and said, how can we market this? And I was resistant to traditional marketing because I was afraid that we would overpromise and underdeliver. We didn't have the infrastructure because primarily, although it's a college course, it's more of a process than a program. And so if it was to expand, we needed to create the infrastructure, and we needed to recruit and train the right kinds of people so that we could maintain high quality as we expanded.
But this is, it's a liberal arts college. I mean, one of the last podcasts I just did was with Dr. Bob Wilmuth, the president for Rocky College, and I'm sure Grandview is struggling with all of the same things that every liberal arts college is struggling with, which is retention, which is recruitment, which is all these things. So they see something and they get these student reviews, and the students are like that was powerful. And so, of course, we can market this. We can recruit. We can solve some of our institutional issues that, with this as a kind of a. But that wasn't necessarily. I mean, your response to that was we got to slow down. There needs to be infrastructure to roll this out.
Yeah. And so we began to do just introductory training, inviting people from the community, mainly family and friends initially. And people had a good experience, and they told other people. And so we were just kind of an independent entity hanging around Grandview for about 1.5 years, and then in February of 2021, we became official part of Grandview University under the title of the Center for Mentor Coaching and Leadership Development.
Mm-hmm. And just to kind of give a, just like what has been achieved since then, how many people have been certified up to this point?
Yeah, I just have finished the draft of our 2025 annual report, and we'll have trained just a few over 200 now who completed all of the requirements for certification. But we kind of have it's kind of a funnel approach. So we have a lot of free intro trainings. Probably our most significant is a free Udemy course called the Mentor Coaching Seminar. And so we've had over 2,000 hits just this year worldwide. And then we have a number of other free introductions to what we call compassionate listening. And so we've got templates so that we can share half hour to 2 hours, depending on our audience and the time that they give us. So we have those kind of free intros.
Which we've done substantially in Billings. I mean, we've done,
Yeah.
One in Veterans Navigation. We've done stuff at the YWCA. We've done stuff at Harvest Church, at that introductory level, and then use those as pools then to recruit towards this. And just to kind of give like you said, when you say you've certified 200 people, we're talking about a 6 to 9 month process that people go through, and we'll kind of talk about that, but that this is a transformational process. Like, it is rigorous, it is intensive. People have to do some serious introspection and learn how to walk with other people in compassionate, meaningful, and transformative ways. And so, this is a deep dive. So when we talk about 200 people, we're talking about 200 people that have been heavily impacted.
Yeah. And part of the strategy is because there's a practicum phase to the certification. So those 200 people have done practicums with at least 3 people 5 times or 4 people 4 times. So there's a multiplication aspect to this. Mm-hmm. So rather than broadcast it as a marketing strategy, it's a mentoring, empowering, multiplication strategy.
Yeah, break that down. Mentoring, empowering, and multiplication.
Yeah, so people can impact people in positive sorts of ways. If people have had a positive experience, they tend to share that with other people in their spheres of influence. And so we recruit primarily word of mouth.
So you've done almost no marketing.
No formal marketing. We have no marketing budget. No big personalities, whatever, although we are beginning to get testimonials, and we're beginning to just share what's happening, because we believe that we have a methodology that is empowering, that most anybody can understand and embrace in terms of becoming a more compassionate person, compassionate listener, compassionate leader, and that people impact people, which impacts cultures. And ultimately, we would like to see more and more compassionate communities, places where people can be valued and heard and seen, and where they can explore the possibilities of their own lives and begin to make the kind of changes that change their story for the better.
Yeah, well, and just, to kind of talk about how our intersection, because, I think it's I want to kind of dive back into the origins of the center and, your history and how you got involved in leadership development. But I didn't really find out about what you were doing and what you were building until maybe a couple of years after you had started that. And I was completing I was working on my PhD in counselor education and, on my own career trajectory. And had discovered something really, really powerful in my own, career as a counselor, which is that when we sit with people, when we walk with people, when we hear them, when we value them, people change and heal and grow. And to sit with people as they discover who they are and their purpose in life and make positive changes towards that is one of the most empowering. Like, I just love it. I mean, I've loved counseling, my entire life. And, it's so interesting because, I have a master's degree and then a PhD. And so I've spent, just an incredible amount of time and energy becoming educated or something like that, like maybe. Yeah, right. But what I discovered when I found out about what you were building is that you had extracted out the most essential things that I learned in counseling. Like all the educational stuff, it all boils down to, that's what you do as a counselor. You sit with people and you value them and you care about them and you invite them to tell their story in a way that helps them organize who they are and maybe tell a better story about who they could be. And that's so powerful. And so I discovered that. But that is actually somewhat simplistic. It was a component of, my academic learning. But it was not the summation of it by any means, but it was the most essential things. And you had extracted that and packaged it in a way that really anybody can access. And so that to me was a really exciting phenomenon. And, I went on to do my dissertation on the Center for Mentor Coaching and Leadership Development. But that to me is, so the most powerful thing that I had uncovered as a counselor, now we have packaged and presented in a way that people can conceptualize, can embody, and can work with others in those types of empowering ways, as well as some things that I would say even my field doesn't necessarily do as well or could, like one of the things that you do in certification is that the timeline, which I just got to witness that for the first time this weekend. And that is an incredibly powerful tool for self-exploration. And we can talk about that in a little bit, but also the action step where we really, really focus on, all right, here's your story, but now let's package that into a SMART goal. Like, what are you going to do with that information that you've just found out about yourself? And so I got really excited about it and have been on this journey with you now for a few years. I mean, maybe we started kind of working together on this in 2021, 22, something like that. Yeah. And then obviously, I went to Denver and we fought Gentry's cancer and now kind of here we are on the other side of that. So maybe let's rewind because I think the center, for me, it's one of these really intriguing phenomenon. I mean, almost just to like, as an outsider looking in, I mean, I've known you, since I was born, really, believe it or not.
For better or worse.
For better, for worse. And, I've kind of gotten a front seat to your development as a teacher and a mentor and a leader. And so where would you say that this dream that has become the Center for Mentor Coaching and Leadership Development, where did it first begin for you?
Well, that's a good question, where to begin in terms of that. I think that since early on in my life, I wanted to be a positive influence. And, figuring that out has taken a lifetime. And I'm not sure whether I have arrived even now, but I got my first kind of opportunities to be in a leadership role and interact with people as a resident assistant during my junior and senior year in my undergraduate studies. And I was awkward. I wasn't very, very good in many ways, but it kind of lit a fire for me that I wanted to be about people work. And so went on to do a master's degree in guidance and counseling and a doctorate in counseling. And so you learn things along the way, what works, what doesn't work, usually what doesn't work. And so my training at William & Mary and my doctoral program was in Rogerian client-centered therapy. So I got pretty good at empathetic listening, shaking my head, going and asking open-ended questions using summarization. And so I worked for several years with people. And what I noticed, not in all cases, but in many cases, I kept hearing the same story over and over again, different circumstances, but I began to realize that people can get stuck in their story. And I didn't find that very satisfying for me, and I was concerned for others. They were spending a lot of time, energy, and resources investing in this particular process, but they were not necessarily becoming better versions of themselves and more effective leaders in their spheres of influence. And so that was kind of a crisis in terms of my people helping orientation. And so I discovered something really simple, but not easy. And that was that if people don't act on insights that they gain that will help them become better versions of themselves and more effective leaders in their spheres of influence, they stay stuck. And so that's when I developed the idea methodology that we train people in through the center.
When did you develop that?
During that process, so I probably, maybe 25 years ago, it began to formulate, and I began to do it with people. And now that I'm older, it's time to pass the baton on, so I'm training people in that particular methodology now. So the I stands for introduction, and the transition question is, how are you doing? Listen, summarize, ask open-ended follow-up questions, make the transition to D, which is discovery. What do you want to talk about? So the people I work with, they lead, and I'm just guiding them through a methodology or a process. So open-ended questions, summarization, follow-up questions, transition from D to E, which is exploration. So I would ask then, so what one thing would you like to explore more deeply? And again, open-ended questions, summarization, follow-up, open-ended questions. And then what I've discovered is where change takes place is in the action step. So the transition question to the action step is, so what one thing are you prepared to act on, and how do you intend to do that? And then we use SMART goals. And what I've seen happen for faithful, teachable, fairly healthy people is they're empowered to take control of their story and begin to develop a new script that is much more healthy and much more positive and much more compassionate.
Yeah, so we always talk about the story within the story, but this is also an act of retelling the story or remaking your story.
Yeah, but what we've discovered is there is a story within a story. So even yesterday, as we were training principals and assistant principals in Billings public schools, and
fun.
As they went through the process, we saw people who began with this understanding of a significant incident in their life. As they went through dyads and processed it or whatever, it became clearer and clearer, or maybe they added some component that they hadn't seen before. So this is really, it's a methodology, but it's a dynamic, relational process of drawing the story out of the story. And, it's not comfortable for everybody. It's not the only way to help people process, but it's very significant and very, very powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we got to witness that. I mean, I even remember, the one gal doing her timeline, and she looked at her timeline and she said, "My family's not on here." And it was just like, she had erected this whole map of her life that fit at least one aspect of her life, but there was something that wasn't incorporated into that. And it was just like you could just see this light bulb turn on, because there was something about how she was telling her story that didn't integrate all of the most important pieces. And like you could just tell that was a light bulb that then she could take with her. And then, especially through that process of taking small steps towards SMART goals or whatever that is, she can begin to incrementally remap her world in a way that aligns the things that she values. That's so powerful, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, another thing that's probably important about our methodology is we encourage people in terms of direction and not perfection. Mm-hmm. So if someone develops an action step that I'm going to do such and such 5 times a week, and then when they report back the next session, they only did it 3. Mm-hmm. Instead of them being unsuccessful, they are successful because they did it three times more than they would have. Mm-hmm. And so we tend to affirm direction and try to help free people from perfection, because perfection's impossible and it'll always defeat us. Yeah.
I mean, that was one of our big topics from yesterday, was the dialectic, the paradox of grit and grace.
Yeah.
You know, that somehow, you know, we need to have the kind of fortitude that keeps getting us back up when we get knocked down. But also, I mean, there was a lot of people in there that were, you know, very high functioning. I mean, that room was full of, you know, principals and just elite leaders. And you could tell that most of them were not very gracious towards themselves. You know, that was a theme, that whatever the internal monologue that continued to produce exceptional outcomes and performance was not a gracious monologue, at least in some cases.
Yeah. Another thing that I kind of noticed yesterday was that people were beginning to connect the dots, that this is just not about being an individual. It's about being a person in community.
Well, let's talk about that too, because that's sort of built into the sauce, right? That's one of the, like, where we switch people up. So when people came into the room, you know, that the high school principals sat with the high school principals, and which is not a bad thing. Like, there was, I mean, we talked with Gerald about that. But then, you know, the elementary, you know, they sat together. Some of the administrators sat together, and then very intentionally we make them switch dyad partners throughout that process.
Yeah, and part of the strategy in terms of that is, in organizations, we tend to silo. When we're busy, we've got all sorts of demands. There's one problem after another. We get exhausted, we get overwhelmed, all those sorts of things. And so then we tend to hunker down in our silos, our school, our department. And so we intentionally have people interact from different silos or different departments or whatever, so they begin to connect with others by hearing the story within the story. And kind of what I saw happening yesterday is there was kind of this sense, the high school, they encounter different issues, but there's some of the same stressors on being the point leader. So they talked about isolation and loneliness at the top, and the overwhelming weight of having to be on all the time and having to make the right decisions and this and that. And just by them being able to verbalize that, I could watch and see other people shaking their head and going, yeah, I can relate to that. And over time, what that may do is help provide a learning community across high school, middle school, so that there is support, so that there is a sense that we're all in this together.
Yeah, that there's something about, because that's what we're after, is building a compassionate community, right? But that has to be an interconnected community in some respects. The other thing that I was kind of reflecting on, because I know that you formed a friendship with Bob Wilmuth, the president of Rocky, and I know one of the first things that he told you, when you guys started talking and you started listening to Bob, is that it's just pretty lonely at the top. With an immense amount of responsibility and a lot of people underneath you that want a lot of different things. That is a lonely experience, and I witnessed that in the room too, with all of those principals and all of those. That is a lonely place to be. Because everybody's coming to you with their problems, right? And you are a stabilizing force. Like, that's what leadership is.
Yeah. They're either coming to you with their problems or their agenda. And you can't please all the people all the time. It's just a tough situation. But, obviously, leadership is important.
And one of our pivotal discussions, too, was that idea. One of our principals shared that he just always had to be on. Like, he had to be the rock, like you were not allowed to have a bad day, or at least that was the sentiment that he expressed. And that actually was, one of our more poignant moments right, in the dialogue. Any thoughts on that? What would you say to that?
Yeah. It's easy to respond with kind of simple solutions to very complex issues, which don't ultimately work out all that well. But I think providing a environment where people can express those kinds of things and wrestle and interact with others may help folks to choose more realistic paths for their leadership. Because there are some traps in leadership that can lead to burnout or blowout or plateauing, and as the leader goes, so does the culture go ultimately. And so being able to help people navigate the reality that leadership is just really, really tough. And there are better ways to lead, that you don't have to be the answer man for every sort of situation, but that you actually can build teams of people that can help complement, and that there can be actually a synergy through teams and communities of people working together. So I'm a big proponent of collaboration. And collaboration, I mean, cooperation is one thing, but collaboration is where my orientation is, I want to see you succeed. It's not just about, okay, how can you help me succeed, but an orientation of leadership that I want to help empower you as my team to be the best that you can be in your circumstances. So, one of the resources that we introduce in this whole training is Liz Wiseman's multipliers, and the contrast between leaders who are diminishers and leaders who are multipliers. We also expose people to David Brooks' The Second Mountain, where we talk about a life that is focused on me and my fulfillment and my success, as opposed to a second mountain, which is focused on others. So we at least expose people to, hey, there may be some different and maybe even some better ways to lead. It's not going to be simple. It's not going to be easy, but it is possible.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so let's go back kind of a little bit. So 25 years ago, the idea methodology, came on like a light bulb. And then, and maybe let's start with this question too, because you share, so we do the timeline exercise. And so, use all these sticky notes, the pink nasties, the bad stuff that you've been through, the life and leadership messages. But you share 2 light bulbs that came on for you when you first started doing your timeline and your autobiography, and those to me were pretty critical insights. Would you mind sharing those 2?
So I did my first Post-it note timeline in 1991, so a long, long time ago.
I was 6.
Yeah, and so I noticed 2 patterns in terms of my life. So one pattern was that since early adolescence, I had significant healthy leaders initiate relationship with me and include me to a certain degree in their lives and what they did. And I just kind of took that for granted. That's just the way life is. And as I began to learn how to listen to the story of others, found out that this is pretty rare. Doesn't usually happen. And at that particular time, I was a college teacher at a small college in Eugene, Oregon. And it dawned on me that here I was, I taught, but I had a group of 4 or 5 young emerging leaders that I would meet with on a Wednesday morning before classes started. I would provide the coffee and the donuts, and we would just talk about life together. And I connected the dot that when I was in seminary, the seminary president included me in a group very similar to that. So it just dawned on me, I've experienced this and I caught it. And so that's now what I'm doing for others. So that was a pretty significant insight for me. There's much more to that.
To really differentiate what you're describing from maybe typical leadership models, it's not, nobody came into your life and just told you, like, you know, they were the wise man, the sage on the stage. Like, it was sitting and having coffee and listening to these young leaders.
And putting up with my immaturity and not giving up on me. I mean, they challenged me from time to time, which I needed, but many of the several of them have passed away. Several of them that are older now, but they stuck with me, and there's a whole backstory to that. But that has been incredibly transforming for me.
Stuck with you, maybe even when you did not deserve.
Usually when I was misbehaving, because I'm a ready, fire, aim kind of guy, and I've been very impulsive. I've got a big mouth, so I've been a diamond in the rough, best case scenario. But over time, because people have loved me and people have believed me, I rubbed off some of the rough edges. The second thing that I saw was that, so I was in my early 40s at that particular time, and when I looked at my career path, I had moved to a different institution, a different role every 3 to 4 years, and I kind of rationalized that. Well, I'm the kind of guy that comes in and fixes things, and then I need to move on.
That was the story you were telling about yourself.
That's the story I was telling myself. But as I kind of pondered that pattern in terms of my life, I became aware that I could kind of fake it for about 3 years, and then some unresolved issues would begin to arise, and then I always ended up in a conflict with my supervisor. And so it's time to, dust off the resume, and because I had been very successful, it was pretty easy to get another job. And so as I was kind of thinking through that whole process, it dawned on me that moving my family every 3 to 4 years was taking a huge toll on my wife, our marriage, and our family. And it was kind of like a light bulb moment, and I recognized that if I didn't make some changes, that I might lose my marriage and create more damage to my children than I already had. And so I made some really hard decisions and ended up staying with that organization for 18 years in 2 different roles. There was one move involved in that, but provided stability for my wife Leslie and more stability for our 3 children. So, this whole process of autobiography timeline, I've repeated it. So I update my autobiography every year. I identify life and leadership lessons, and then I develop a personal strategic plan for each year. Now, I don't do it completely, but it's helped me become pretty focused. And then as I've learned things about myself, I think it's helped me to be more compassionate for other people, because we're all kind of in this together. And
flailing about a bit, I think.
Yeah.
Everybody is just flailing and trying to, make it to the other side of this big journey we're on. Daddy, I just noticed, especially when you were talking about that first thing, those mentors, some of whom have passed away. I mean, there was like an emotion that kind of came up, and I was just curious what you would say to those mentors of yours. I mean, I know Bobby Clinton was one of them. I don't know who the others were, but what would you say to them when you reflect back on your journey?
Thank you. That they saw potential in, someone who had a lot of issues. I'm dyslexic, I'm ADHD, I was 7-month preemie. I don't have natural social or emotional intelligence. I've had to really work at how to relate to people in positive ways. I felt like an outcast most of my life. I graduated in the bottom half of my high school.
You were in a fight every other day?
Yeah, in a fight every other day. And then when I was successful academically, I mask my sense of inadequacy with being an asshole. Had to be right, had to be in control, manipulated, and saw a side of myself eventually around age 40 that I go, I don't like who I see. I don't like who I'm becoming. I've got to make some changes. And so that's for me where I began to recognize that the first mountain was not fulfilling for who I aspired to be as someone who wanted to be a positive influence in this life. And so as David Brooks describes, I had to spend some time, and I occasionally revisit the valley of brokenness. But, I find at this particular time in my life, I'm 76, I'll be 77 in a couple of months, but I get to do what I do and see people experience transformation, and nothing on the first mountain even compares to the fulfillment and satisfaction and deep sense of gratitude that I experienced at this phase in my life.
What are some stories that come to mind? You think about what it is that you get to do now, as you've found your second mountain.
Yeah, I think of since 2001, we've kind of developed a team of independent contractors, people who really own this concept.
2021, right?
Yeah. What did I say?
I think 2001. I don't think we've been at it quite that long.
Yeah, 2021. So we've got about 18 or 20 independent contractors who are part of our team. And to see how they've embraced this and how it's impacted their lives in such positive ways, and impacted their marriages, and impacted their leadership, or even their styles. So there's 2 or 3 folks who teach at the college or the graduate level, and they've incorporated discovery learning in their curriculum. And to hear the reports of how students light up in classes where they get to discuss things and discover things for themselves and are not just told. So and then the number of people that, because we don't market, because we don't have this master plan, it's relational and situational, and almost every week or so encounters someone who is also on a similar pilgrimage in terms of they recognize that compassion is a solution to a lot of the dysfunction and toxicity of our culture, and are courageously trying to find ways to bring that to their marriages, to their families, to their institutions, and to their communities. And so, for me, I'm not going to see the fulfillment of this, but I have a dream of a more compassionate world. And so I'm very grateful that I get to play the role that I do, and I'm passing the baton on to you and to others. And I have great hope that I can leave a better world, that you can leave a better world, that others can do that.
Well, I think about even just what we've been involved in this weekend. So, we're taking 20 people now through certification between Harvest and SD2. And as part of their practicum, they have to recruit 3 people and do 5 mentor coaching sessions, or 4 people 4 times. And so multiply that by 20, right? And that's 100 people in our community that are going to have somebody sit with them and hear them and walk with them. And, even as you were talking about your mentors and the gratitude and that you have for those people who stuck with you. And I talk about this piece of research quite a lot, but it's a piece of research in the criminal justice system, and they looked at recidivists versus people who went on to lead impactful, meaningful, productive lives. And so they looked at all these, they're in the criminal justice system, they have really high ACE scores. And what they found, there was one common denominator between the ones who went on to, stay in the criminal justice system, and live that out, versus the people who rewrote their stories. And all of the people who rewrote their stories could list one person who stuck with them, one person who walked with them, even when they fell down, even when it got ugly, And to me, that was one of the most powerful, pieces of research I've ever encountered. But that seems to be the difference maker. If there's somebody who sees you, values you, cares about you, and is willing to walk, this really messy journey that we call life with you, there's hope. And so, I just think about 20 people and just this practicum. We're introducing that into our community in a not insignificant way at all, not to mention the relationships that, we watched start to form between, principals and vice principals of different schools. And I think we're just seeing this multiplying now. Like the multiplication component of this is happening now, and that's really exciting.
It reminds me of our friend Joel Thorson. I first met in 2001 when he got out of prison. He had been the main meth manufacturer and distributor in central Iowa. And he had a spiritual encounter while he was in prison, and showed up at the church that we attended.
Which was Steve Petzel's church, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And so I connected with him and have walked with him through the ups and downs for the last 25 years. But he currently is probably the key person in the greater Des Moines area in Celebrate Recovery, and has established, I think they're going on their sixth recovery home. And so here's this guy whose life was just devastated, but over time see that there's been this redemptive aspect to his life. And so he has a new story, and it's a whole lot better story.
But it's not been straightforward. I mean, I've known Joel too for,
No.
and I can remember, right? So you've mentored Joel for a very, very long time, but I remember Joel showing up on our doorstep on a Thanksgiving, right?
It was Easter.
It was Easter, yeah. And he talks about that. I've had some very deep conversations with Joel as, this moment where, I don't know, like he was either probably going to go jump off a bridge or go on a bender or something like that. And instead he showed up at our doorstep. And let's be honest, not a not scary person. To have show up on your doorstep on Easter.
No.
But you answered, or we answered, and I don't know what you said to him, but he marks that in his lifeline as, that was the beginning of his road to recovery, and now he's making a huge difference, and he works with the hardest population.
Yeah.
And just is a relentless suffering servant. Mm-hmm. He really is. He really embodies, what that means, and that's pretty powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's nothing like, you take somebody like Joel, and for somebody like that to recover and then to go on and make a difference in the community, that is a miracle. Like that does not happen very often.
And another aspect of it is, that's not my background. I don't come out of addiction. I've got other issues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I get to be a part of what's happening in the recovery community, not directly, but because I had the privilege of being able to hear the story within the story and help someone who desperately wanted to be better than he was over a 25-plus year process, begin to really understand that he is a new creation in Christ Jesus. The old things have passed, and new things have come.
We went to Ron's church this Sunday and talked about the parable of the sower of seeds, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking about that, right? And this is the fertile ground. Like, let's be honest, Joel was not fertile ground.
No, yeah.
But somehow through like the relentless cultivation, but it's not quite that simple, but something grew.
Yeah. And I even think of my relationship with Bobby Clinton, who has been my primary mentor for years. Now he's in his late 80s and he has dementia, and that's another story. But he's stuck with me over the long haul, many ups and downs and whatever. And so in some ways now, because he passed the baton on to me, I'm carrying what he learned about leadership development to another generation. Mm-hmm. Now, he was an academic, a seminary professor, so his methodology, his research was very, very academic, and it was not accessible to just regular folks like me. And so
but Bobby Clinton, just to give a little background there, is a huge name in Christian circles and in biblical circles. Even like when we started connecting with Alex Falder mm-hmm. over at Harvest, I think that was one of the moments where I was talking to him. I was like, some of the materials, Bobby Clinton, that was one of my dad's mentors, and that was like, Alex was like, he got really interested. And that is not an uncommon phenomenon that that Fuller Seminary has had an enormous impact, and he was one of the big theologians, I would say. But it's just interesting,
Yeah. But again, this idea of multiplication. So I had the ability to take his very complex concepts and to simplify them so that people can better understand them and apply them to their lives. Mm-hmm. And so that's a great honor and privilege that he would entrust me to do that. He just told me, you have my permission, just do it well. Mm-hmm. And I've tried.
Which is, I think that's the flip side of mentorship, right? I mean, it's such an honor to walk with people. I mean, just to watch them grow, but sometimes that, you carry a flame, and you can pass that flame on to some of the people that you've had an impact on, and watch them cultivate that. Mm. And so that must be satisfying for Dr. Clinton as well, and I would imagine you as well, as you see some of your mentees, you see some of, even Nate Petzel comes to mind as somebody who went to EBC College, while you were a professor there. And this is, you don't even live in Billings, right? I mean, this is me and like Nate and Ron Rager and just all of these wonderful, Billings characters that are making an impact. And so this idea of mentorship, this idea, like, it just grows beyond you in this really, really profound way.
Yeah, it's a little bit like crabgrass. It develops an infrastructure that keeps popping up and popping up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Crabgrass, all right, yeah. So there was one other aspect of kind of this story that I wanted to delve into a little bit, and that's yours and my trajectory, and so even kind of to take this back, there's one moment in time that really comes to mind, and this would have been, and I talk about it a lot, that I had a pretty dark period in my life, and really, really struggled with some very, very profound things, and I'm fortunate to be to have made it to the other side of that. But one of the things that kept you and I connected was fly fishing, which is actually, and not to go too far into fly fishing, I actually thought about, like, we could tell this your in my story just with fly fishing is kind of the centralizing, but we're doing mentoring. So, but all right, so I was not doing well. I was, but you kept taking me fishing, and then on one of those fishing trips, probably, that was dead center of when things were maybe the darkest. But we went fishing probably in the Bighorns, and then went to California afterwards. To maybe you, just jump in there and talk about that story where you kind of had that vision of what may come.
Yeah, the difficulty with vision is we're all human, and so we process sometimes what we want to. But you were in a difficult stage, and Mom needed a break, and I was doing a week-long training at a YOM base in Southern California, and so I forced you to come along with me, and you were somewhat compliant.
Not real enthusiastic.
But not really enthusiastic. And so I would actually make you sit in my sessions. And you would sit in the very back and were bored out of your gourd. And so as I was sharing, I just had this moment where I saw that one day you and I would be sharing our story together, and it would bring healing to people. And I only shared that with Mom, and we prayed into that for a number of years. But it was this last June when we did the mentor coaching skills training here in Billings together that we co-facilitated together. And there was just that sense of gratitude and a sense just of the faithfulness, the goodness of God. Because you were pretty far gone.
Yeah, it's pretty unlikely that was actually going to take place.
Yeah. But we prayed into that, and we tried to be available as we could to you as you were working out your stuff, and never gave up on you. So we're very proud of you and Kylie and the family.
Yeah, it's I don't know how we got here. Grace, right?
Yep. And maybe a little bit of mercy as well.
Some fly fishing.
Yeah. So
Trips to the Bighorn. Yeah.
So I've got a title for we can co-author a book called Freedom Through Fly Fishing.
Okay, all right.
Although you catch a whole lot more fish than I do now.
I mean, it's interesting just how the tapestry of our existence is just woven in these just unpredictable, unforeseeable. I just don't know, like, how we got here. I mean, fly fishing is what got me out to Billings. And, you know, all the stuff that you were building. Like, I mean, I think it's one of the things that I think is really interesting is that independently of you, and I'm sure you had some unconscious impact on my trajectory and development, but these truths, I think that we're here and that we're sharing a stage together and having this privilege, this opportunity of teaching and loving and caring for people and really, I think, giving a gift to our community. I mean, I just love what we're doing. It's so fun. It's so exciting. It's so powerful. But, you know, I kind of went my own career, which was not, I mean, your doctorate's in counseling too, but I was a counselor, you know, and just uncovered some of these things. And then, you know, it was so cool when you had started the center, and then I started learning a little bit more about the center, and I was like, wow, you know, like, to me, I was like, you know, that I think that the central truths to enable people to heal, to work with people in healing ways, were like you'd gotten there as well. And to me, that was just sort of fascinating, in this convergence of our two rivers that had somewhat, you know, that had flowed separately and independently and then come back together, and now here we are. So I wanted to talk about kind of one other thing as well, because the Center for Mentor Coaching and Leadership Development came out of, as so many things do, some wreckage. You know, for you personally, I mean, you were talking about how, you know, you had to address that 3-year pattern of, you know, you could fake it, you could, you know, just drive, grit, those things would get you about 3 years down the road, and then something unresolved would surface and cause some conflict that would then, and you addressed that. You did the hard work that, you know, that story confronted you. And instead of, you know, just doubling down on your story, you did the work and stayed with Open Bible Church. I mean, that was EBC Bible College, and then on to, you were, I think, the youth leadership, what was your position?
Executive Director of Leadership Development.
Yep. And that came to a head, and I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about that. So you would, you know, you did your work, and then, you know, you stabilized, you invested in an organization deeply and faithfully, and that led to an outcome.
Yeah. So just a little bit of backstory of that. So I was at a transition in about 1991, and I got a phone call from Jeff Farmer, who is the president of Eugene Bible College, saying, we're looking for someone who has a doctorate in counseling and youth with a mission discipleship training school experience, of which there was probably 2 of us in the world. And so very interesting how I didn't know him. I didn't even know about the college prior to that. And so this is another one of those stories of mentoring and empowering. So we traveled from Northern California up to Eugene for an interview. And at that particular time in my life, I was in that valley of brokenness. So I was really vulnerable and transparent with him that, you know, I looked pretty good on my resume, but that he should do due diligence, and so I gave him the names of 3 people that I had fallings out with, and I said, I really feel like you need to contact these people and get a perspective on me.
That's an interesting interview technique.
Yeah. But, I just was worn down. I couldn't fake it any longer. I just had to be real. This is who I am, or whatever. So the following day, he had contacted those people, and so we met. And he said, I contacted those people, and he said I had some pretty interesting conversations. And I go, well, this is done. And he said this. He said, I can come to one of 2 conclusions. I'll get emotional here again. He said, one is that you've got some really serious unfinished business, or that you just haven't found the right place to serve. And he said, I choose the second one. So I was with him for 18 years. And in 2008, the board of the Association of Churches that I was involved in decided to close down the leadership development office. So there was a transition period there. But because of my work with Bobby Clinton, I knew that this didn't happen by accident, that there was a purpose in the midst of this, that you can't always control your circumstances, but you can always control your attitudes. And so with that transition in 2008, I started a sole proprietorship, the Convergence Group, and have been kind of an independent contractor since then. And it's been a great, great fit for me.
Can you just rewind a little bit, though, because I think that kind of glosses over, like, when you lost that job, that was really disorienting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was more than disorienting.
Yeah.
It was incredibly hurtful. But I mean that's all part of, life is that way. Mm-hmm. And so, but
in that disorientation, you felt like you received some wisdom, because you told me that story, so
yeah. So because I'm a Christ follower, I have learned that I may not know what's going on, but God has a pretty good idea. And I've gradually over time learned that his ways are not my ways, but his ways are better. Mm-hmm. Now, they may be difficult, painful, disorienting, those sorts of things, but God is good, and he's a good giver, good gifts. Even though I don't have the capacity to understand so many things. But in that transition, as I sought God, what's going on? What am I supposed to do? I still had responsibilities. I still had mortgage payments. I still had all of this, whatever. All I sensed from God was wait. I don't wait very well. So it was kind of a wrestling wait. But after about 6 months, I had what I call a download, of a moment of clarity. And which
you've had a few of those over the course of your life, but this was one of maybe the most significant ones.
Yeah, recently anyway. Mm-hmm. And so that's when I connected with Bobby Clinton to ask him permission to contextualize his research methodology. And so I've worked now for...
What was the download? Where were you at when it happened?
Yeah, I was in a moment of, a lot of my prayer is not begging God for anything any longer. It's just trying to still myself to accept whatever He would have for me, to hear the still, quiet voice. And so I just got a download of a methodology, IDEA, which I had developed for individual for a curriculum process. And so asked him for permission. He granted permission, just told me to do it well. And so fast forward, end of 2025, I have written over 50 books and workbooks contextualizing his leadership development methodology. And so now I'm in a situation where I am developing curriculum for other organizations using the kind of library of resources that I've developed. And, with a vision. So I'm working with someone in Youth with a Mission who has connections to be able to get this material for free or for very reasonable price to multiple languages and be able to share it with the world.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's because it's such an incredible phenomenon that I witnessed again, kind of from the front seat, but you were faithful. You resolved whatever unfinished business that caused that pattern, stayed with an organization, had, just a not great, not uplifting end to that chapter. And then, we're on the other side of that, right? I mean, that's, like the descent, right? Mm-hmm. Where you're disoriented, and then, all you hear is wait. And then you get this download that somehow leads to writing 50 workbooks in 5, 6, 7 years or something like that. I mean, I don't...
It's been 17 years.
Okay. But then that also culminates in the center, and in mentoring and coaching and the convergence group and probably finding your greatest calling yet. Mm-hmm. That's...
Yeah. And it's interesting because even when I was with the Association of Churches, I was mentoring young leaders. That's what my primary role was. And I don't think that the board really understood the power of that. Mm-hmm. So fast forward, the new president of that Association of Churches is one of the guys that I mentored. Mm-hmm. And we're in contact. We have a relationship. So
your talk is that they might be really in need of a leadership development program.
Yeah, right. Yeah, they hired a consultant to figure out what their greatest needs were. But that's just all human stuff. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we're all just floundering, mm-hmm. trying to figure it out the best that we can. And these are good people mm-hmm. who meant well. But even in the midst of that, we can rub one another wrong and whatever. And what I've learned is you never can be captive to the negative circumstances of life if you can forgive.
Well, that is one of the things that this podcast I've really been intrigued by, called to, the types of stories that I hope to tell. But it's these moments in time, these opportunities where bitterness is an option. Like you could take that series of events, and I think of Bob Wilmoth and cancer, and surgery was taken from him. He was no longer able to practice at this thing that he'd perfected, this piece of his identity as a healer, as a helper, that was just taken from him. And then bitterness is an option. It always is. Or I think of Mitch Bond, who's he's in a wheelchair, and just that conversation I had with him, I asked him that, like his love for baseball and learning to love it from the sidelines, and he had that opportunity I mean, bitterness is it's just always waiting at our door. Or Alyssa Leininger, painting her murals. She's over at the 6th Street underpass, and somebody breaks into her car and steals her mom's wallet, and I mean, a sequence of events, and instead of bitterness, Alyssa just kept painting, and to me, that is one of those the phenomena that I'm just most intrigued by. And what helps people. I don't know. Keep loving.
Yeah, bitterness is the easy way.
It is.
Yeah, but as human beings, we have the capacity to not be controlled by that. I don't have to be bitter. Doesn't mean that some really hurtful, confusing issues have occurred in my life, and many of them unresolved. But the exhortation that I got from Bobby Clinton about I can't always control your circumstances, but you can always control your attitude. And I've just chosen that. I want to become a more loving person, and I want to be able to pass that baton on to the next generation. And I just I refuse to curse the darkness. I'm going to light a candle.
Maybe a few candles.
Yeah.
And that's I love that as kind of a transition to maybe the final topic to discuss, but just where the sinner is now. I mean, that would be my perspective on the sinner, that it's an act of love. And that's the whole point. And an act of teaching others how to be more effective when they love. So where are things at now, and where do you hope to see this go? I mean, you're so 76. You're
77, and so I kind of have a sense that I need to pass the baton on by the time I'm 80, and so we're in a kind of a transition where Jim Collins, who wrote a book called From Good to Great, talks about great leaders. They get the right people on the bus, meaning you've got to get the wrong people off the bus, and they get the right people in the right seats. And so we're kind of in that process right now of trying to discern who needs to be on the bus and how to get them in the right seats, and so that this thing can continue on if it's supposed to. And there's a lot of issues. There's personnel issues, there are financial issues, there is our relationship with Grandview. We have favor at this particular time, but where is that going to go in the future? Because of their accreditation is a key part of the significance of this particular training. So we just are, in some ways, are making it up as we go, but a confidence that I have a confidence that I'm going to be able to turn this thing over to you and to others in a way that you'll be able to prosper.
Well, and I think of the unlikeliness that, because it's not like this is the first moment where there are some unresolved issues, right? in like where this thing is going to go. But I very often think about, it was 2+ years ago now where, this is on my end, but my son was diagnosed with cancer. Grandma died, passed away. You had a stroke that nobody really thought you were going to come back from. And I got a brain injury. It was like 2 months, and that was I just remember, laying in a hospital bed with the world spinning around me, thinking that this just isn't going to work. And so, at least, that was one instance of, but somehow we're here now instead, and we're teaching leaders in our community. We're sharing a vision for a better tomorrow. My son has been returned. you're not a vegetable.
Right,
That's
right,
nice.
Yeah. And I had a second one as well, so I am a walking miracle.
Yeah, I mean, and Grandma, I mean, she was an amazing human being who lived a wonderful life, and so I mean, there's no single one of those that hasn't been redeemed, and so at least for me personally, as we look to the unknowable future, it gives some confidence that there's something working in our family, in our lives.
Yeah. Well, thank you, and I'm proud of you, and it's a incredible privilege to be able to do this together. So thank you.
Yeah, love you, Dad.
Love you too.
Thank you for listening to the Pay Love Forward podcast. If this conversation moved you, inspired you, or made you pause to reflect, don't let it in there. Pay Love Forward is more than a podcast. It's a movement, a community, a way of being. At its heart is a simple commitment to invest in others in ways that multiply. In partnership with Resilient Stories, we're committed to hearing the story within the story, the deeper narrative of courage, compassion, and renewal that reminds us who we are and what we're capable of together. If you'd like to walk with us, find a mentor, find a mentee, or join one of our community gatherings. You can connect through Facebook or visit www.payloveforward.net to learn more. Let's keep building something beautiful together.